Hey everybody, Thomas here again with another Mosaic training video. This one is just going over the sort of plan and the basics for this hypertrophy period that I'm doing right now. So this one is one of the more experimental parts of the whole training program. It's kind of mixed in terms of what good climbers, people who do a lot of training, think in terms of the impact of hypertrophy on climbing, if it's worth the time. So mostly I wanted to do this as an experiment. And hopefully we can kind of figure out if it's worth the time and effort later on when we do the final assessment and everything. So a lot of this stuff is going to be borrowing, slash stealing from the people who have more experience with the ideas of hypertrophy, which would be the lifting community. I still think there's a lot of stuff that we can, as climbers, can learn from that community and the science that they've looked into. So anyway, take that with a grain of salt. This is mostly based on results of the lifting community. So in general, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is for hypertrophy, it's a lot of high set and high rep, but in that case, low resistance training. So a lot of this stuff, for all of my stuff, it was 5 sets of everything. And I tried, my rep range was pretty big, between 6 and 20. And so because that's, a lot of sets, a lot of reps, it just takes a lot of time to do that stuff. One of the things that I find really helpful is supersetting, which is the idea of doing, staggering exercises that use hopefully different muscle groups that you can kind of go back to back to back without much rest, just because if you do like curls and then tricep extensions, you can go one and then the other, and then you're not taking as much time to just purely rest, but you're resting the muscle group effectively that you just worked. The other thing that's good for hypertrophy, again, kind of because of this volume issue, is to focus on the single joint exercises. So, like, curls are a good example of something that's very targeted to the muscle that you want to work. And the main reason for that is you're trying to minimize the systemic fatigue in that case. If you're doing a lot of compound exercises, they're just tiring, like whole body tiring, and you might fail earlier than you would just because of the whole body fatigue, rather than like really getting that one muscle worked. And that's one thing I'm noticing now is a lot of the climbing workouts, exercises that I'm putting in there are pretty compound, and it's definitely having that effect. So just something to keep in mind. If you know where you're weak, it's really advantageous, just because you can hit that muscle group really hard. One of the nice things about hypertrophy is that you can, when you're doing these kind of workouts, you don't have to feel 100% when you're going into it. A lot of times with strength or power, you want to feel like super ready to go, really good. And you don't want to like just go through the motions with that stuff. With hypertrophy, you can grind your way through a workout and it's still effective. So even if you're feeling crappy, you're low energy, whatever, really try to get motivated just to get through it, because it does have an effect, even if it doesn't feel like it might at the time. And then in terms of how you change up your workout, so the main variable, as you can see from that rep range, should be reps. If you're doing, if you're feeling better and better as you go, and you want to progress, increase the reps, just because you have such a wide range to work within there. Then after that, I've been doing increasing the resistance. If I get to fairly high rep, a set of reps in that range. And then after that, if you're really feeling good, you can increase the sets if you want to. I'm not doing that so far. I'm sticking with 5 sets, just because again it takes a lot of time. And then the final thing, which I've been trying to experiment with, but haven't done too much with so far, are drop sets. So the idea of usually at the end of your workout, just hammering usually is like one muscle group really hard by finishing your normal sets. And then at the end, you do a few extra sets of decreasing resistance, but very little rest. So you might, finish up, rest for like 20 seconds. Let's say curls, for example. If I'm doing a set of curls at like 30 pounds, I'm done with my normal stuff. I might drop the weight down to like 20 pounds after that last set. Do as many reps as I can, basically to failure at that point. Rest a very short time, again, maybe like 20, 30 seconds. Drop the weight again down to like 10 pounds, and just essentially just work myself to failure at that point. And then that's, again, supposed to be a pretty potent tool for hypertrophy. It's, again, tough to know when to do that, at least for me. So it's something that I'm trying out, and it seems to work pretty well for exercises like curls, where you have potentially they're targeted and they have a high rep range potential in general. But yeah, we'll see how that pans out in the end. I've been mixing them in where I can. Okay, so getting into a little bit more specific. So in terms of the hypertrophy, like the actual climbing part, I haven't been changing it up too much. The main thing I've been trying to do during this phase is to maintain a wide variety of stuff, and trying to work more on like my flash, or very few attempts at a problem rather than like projecting anything. And this has been pretty nice. It gets me, again, a lot of volume, which fits in with the hypertrophy type of mindset. But it also is kind of nice because it keeps it fresh. You're working on different angles and different terrain and all that stuff. And while you're doing this, it is very helpful to identify your weaknesses as you're going. Again, you probably should have all your stuff planned out beforehand anyway. But if something like pops into your head, like, oh, I suddenly noticed that this is really weak, you can use that to inform your actual workout plan. And then for outdoor stuff, I've been trying to just kind of search around looking for other projects to add to the list, and then maybe figuring out beta as I go. I'm not expecting to actually make much progress on those at this point, but it's always good to kind of figure out what you want to work on later on. And then in terms of actual split, like climbing time versus workout time, I've been trying to keep over or around 2/3 of my time dedicated to climbing. I have definitely noticed that this is a bit difficult to do. And if you have a lot more time, you shouldn't ever think of it as a pure, or I shouldn't think of it as a pure percentage thing. If I had more, it's more of a minimum amount of time that you want to spend actually climbing and honing the craft. So if you have more time to dedicate that, you can, as long as you're reaching that time goal of actually climbing, you can do more of the workout stuff and the ancillary stuff after. But for me, I've been trying to keep about 2/3 of my time dedicated to actually climbing, which is tough. Again, when you see kind of the workouts that I've been doing, it's hard to get that amount of time, basically. Okay, so for actual training for climbing, not just climbing itself, I've been doing repeaters mostly. They are mostly reviled as being kind of miserable, and they are. One thing I do find is that you get used to them, and they get a little bit less annoying as you go, especially if you put on just a YouTube video or some climbing video or something in the background. It's not too bad at all. So my version of repeaters is very similar to Manny the Monkey's fairly recent hangboard protocol. So I've been doing repetitions of 7 seconds hanging and 3 seconds rest, and doing that, repeating that 6 times per set. So that's a minute, which is easy to keep track of. And I have been alternating, like Manny does, between half crimp and 3-finger hangs. And he makes a good point makes an observation that he finds that it hits different muscle groups when he alternates like that. I'm not sure if I've noticed a huge amount, but it does give me a very good excuse to work on my three finger position, which I'm garbage at. So anything I can do to improve that will be really nice. I do notice that the three finger, and he has this observation too, is almost always a limiting factor when I'm going. Um, so that's one thing to keep in mind when you're kind of choosing your edge sizes. And then in between each set, I've been taking 2 minutes off. I know he mentions 3 minutes. I think this is fairly individual. I usually choose 2 minutes just because I feel pretty fresh at that point. And also, it just takes so damn long to get through it anyway. Like adding another minute rest in between each one would mean you're doing like an hour-long hangboard workout, which is just dull. And then for grips, I've been using for the half crimp a homemade just 12 mil oak edge, and just because the 15 was a little bit too easy. And then for three fingers, I've been using just a 20 millimeter normal edge. I was going to try to make, and I just finished making the kind of half dowels that Manny was using, just because I like that as an idea, but I wanted to keep it consistent, so I stuck with the same normal edge the whole time. And then generally you want to end your workout when one of your grip types really fails, and usually that's like you don't get beyond halfway through your hangs in a set. During the progression, I started at 4 sets of each grip, so that's 8 total sets of hanging, and then I worked my way all the way up to 8 sets of each grip, so 16 total sets, which is like, it wound up being, like a 40-something minute hangboard workout, which it does get a little bit dull. But you definitely notice, I mean, you get pumped, it works. So hopefully, as long as that is what you're aiming for, this is a pretty effective training plan for sure. And then beyond the normal hangboard, the traditional thing, I've been experimenting with a couple different types of kind of finger forearm training. One of them is using the handy dandy wrist trainer that I have a DIY video for. And this one is, rather than using it like you normally would, which would be like an isometric kind of hold with heavy weight, I was doing concentric wrist curls with lighter weight. And I was aiming for about 10 reps. It wasn't very much weight, compared to the lift. It was, 35 pounds. I think it was about half of my normal lifting weight. But it seems like they've been going pretty well. I haven't noticed much progress, but I'm curious if they help in the end with the actual wrist strength. And then using the no hang device, also which I have a DIY video for, I've been doing finger curls. So these would be starting, from an open hand grip on the no hang device, and then trying to curl up to a kind of faux full crimp. So not really like full crimping, but getting into that position with the thumb up enough. So it's essentially forcing you to flex to the point where that kind of MCP joint starts to flex, and it sounds like that is a pretty beneficial thing. I think Tom Randall from Mouse Training had a little video on that kind of stuff. So I've been trying to do that as well. Again, both of these are kind of experimental, so this is more out of my curiosity than anything else. And then for the traditional weight training stuff that I've been doing, I was trying to identify, of the myriad possible workout exercises that you would want to do, the things that would benefit me the most. And one of the things personally that I have found as a limiting factor for me is my shoulder strength. And I was kind of trying to hit things that might improve that, while also falling into the kind of 3 general categories that I was choosing between in having pull specific exercises, push specific exercises, and then core stuff. And I've definitely noticed that unless I really focus on adding in the pushing stuff, I tend to neglect it, and I think it has been causing some imbalances. So I really wanted to be strict about that. So anyway, for pull exercises, the first one I wanted to do, which is the obvious one, was just weighted pull-ups. This one, I don't know if it was a mistake on my part to choose this, just because this is definitely a compound exercise, and I certainly notice it having a kind of systemically fatiguing effect in general. So I'm not sure how useful this is in general, but anyway, it's hard for me to point out climbing specific workouts without having weighted pull-ups in there somewhere. So I was aiming for kind of lower reps, 6 to 10 reps. Generally speaking, 6 reps seems to be the kind of the minimum you want to hit for hypertrophy. And so I was trying to do slightly lower weight. So it was about 40% of my 1 rep max, and then aiming for 6 to 10 reps. And I was trying to go a little bit wider grip, just to give a bit of a different stimulus than I normally would. It wasn't something crazy super wide, it was just a bit wider than normal. And then the second pull exercise I chose were barbell rows. So again, I was kind of trying to work in 3 different planes for all of these. So like above the head, kind of equal to the shoulder, kind of pulling that sort of plane, and then sort of below that middle point pulling up. So this kind of middle plane, I chose barbell rows. And the main thing I notice, I've done these before, but one thing I found really hard with these is keeping your form strict. It's really easy to fall into the trap of generating just even a tiny bit with your legs, which makes it not a great like isolated exercise. So keeping that in mind, that's one thing to look for when you're doing barbell rows. But I was trying to keep these pretty low rep as well, just kind of 6 to 10 reps. And then the final one were curls. And so far, these have been very effective, at least effective in terms of making progress at the actual exercise. It remains to be seen if this is effective in the long run in terms of climbing performance. But for these, I was using a cable machine to do the curls and keeping the reps pretty high, so 10 to 20 reps. And then, like I mentioned before, these ones I hit with a few drop sets. It seems to be pretty well suited for that in general. So those were the pull exercises. And then moving on to the pushes, again, I kept it in the 3 kind of different planes, above the head, equal to the kind of shoulders, and then below. And the first push, which is surprisingly hard when you actually do them, are Arnold presses. So that's using dumbbells, and it's an overhead press, but with a bit of a little bit more rotation at the bottom, which is supposed to kind of hit the shoulders and the delts more, have a little bit more impact there, which I can definitely feel. Hopefully it's actually working. And you'll be surprised, you do pretty lightweight. Like for me, I started off at 20 pounds, and I think I got up to 25 was all. And 10 reps was painful. It was rough to get up there. So these have been pretty helpful, and hopefully they're good for the kind of balancing out the pull stuff. And then for the middle plane, I just did typical bench press. Pretty low weight again, and I wanted to make sure I could focus on form as well. I was hoping to continue with the bench in the strength phase, and I wanted to make sure I ironed out any weird form issues and that I was ready to go. So for these, I didn't do hugely high weight, and I kept the reps pretty low. It was kind of mostly in the high end of this range, more toward the 10 rep area, and those have been good. It's been nice to get that going again. And then for the final plane, I was doing just dips, and I was mostly doing these at home after we'll see the schedule later, but after my hangs, I would do a couple of different home exercises, and dips were one. And so I did them on the rings, which always adds a bit of a difficulty there. And I was keeping them kind of high reps, so mostly around that 10 rep range. And these were definitely useful. I've noticed a pretty big improvement on those, and just kind of the muscle balance has been helped a bit by doing more dips. And then for core, there's all sorts of stuff you could do. You can do ice cream makers, which I still don't know why they call them ice cream makers, but they're essentially the like lever repetitions where you're going up into a lever and then back down, not really holding it very much. Those are always good. I find those very helpful. Toes to bar are always nice and painful to do. Hopefully they help with the lever later on too, but they're just in general pretty good. And I feel like they would translate pretty well to climbing. And then rollouts, I use a very old like ab wheel, which, man, I must have gotten that thing, I don't know, like 15 years ago or something like that. And it's for such a cheap little piece of equipment, and it's lasted a long time. So anyway, those are nice to have if you don't have one. They're good for just a nice simple ab workout. And then I was trying to do deadlifts. It's kind of tough to do hypertrophy with deadlifts, I found. But kind of like the bench, I wanted to make sure I did a little bit of high rep stuff so I could work on form, and work on breathing and some of that stuff as I did it. And yeah, it's a tough one to mix in with hypertrophy, but I just wanted to add it in there. And then finally, just a simple 8-minute ab type thing. The one that I do always ends up being like 9 minutes, but essentially is what I'm sure have heard of before, where for me it's continuing with an ab workout for 50 seconds, resting 10 seconds, going to a next one for 50 seconds, and doing usually it's 8 to kind of 10 different exercises, trying to hit different parts of the ab. So, I usually do upper ab kind of stuff, so upper body moving, lower ab, so like leg lift type things, and then obliques, and then trying to mix in one like lower back kind of Superman type workout. So those are good. They always make you feel, they make you feel like you did a lot in a short amount of time. So hopefully that actually translates to being useful as well. Okay, so the example week, which it winds up being pretty hectic, and I think moving forward, I might have to try to parse this or pare this down. So I did Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the gym. Monday, so obviously before all this stuff, I would do my normal climbing. I would do my workouts would be the wrist curls. I do the weighted pull-ups, the Arnold presses, the curls, and then the ice cream makers. Tuesday, I would do my repeaters, and then I would do dips, like I mentioned, and then usually rollouts, and then finish off with an 8-minute ab session. Then Wednesday, the finger curls with the no hang device. Pull-ups again. Pull-ups was one that I identified as being one of the more important, so I wanted to make sure I got two sets of that in throughout the week. Then bench, the bar rows, and then the kind of toes to bar leg raises. That one was always kind of a hard workout. And then Thursday, basically the same thing as Tuesday, repeaters, the dips, and then I would do some kind of ab thing, ice cream makers or rollouts or whatever, and then finish off again with 8-minute abs. Friday, kind of similar to Monday in terms of the wrist curls. I would do curls here, and then the Arnold presses, and then try to do deadlifts and leg raises. So my thought here was that in general, there are certain muscle groups that recover a lot more quickly than others, and the biceps generally would, for me anyway, recover a little bit quicker. So I figured if I wanted to do anything on Friday, potentially going outside or something the next day, I would try to stack up those exercises that hit muscle groups that are pretty easy to, or that recover a little bit better, so I wouldn't feel totally dead on the weekend. And then on the weekend, I've been bad about going outside. I don't know why. I haven't been super motivated, but it's either going out looking for projects, trying stuff, going into the gym and just doing easy stuff if you want to, or rest. And generally I've been resting. or doing cardio or whatever. But it's been kind of nice out, so I've been doing a lot of just random housework and other projects and stuff too. So it's nice to have a bit of time. Okay, so I'm trying, because again, this is an experimental phase, coming up with how to measure success is pretty important. So the obvious one is the assessment, which I've done a video on, what the assessment that I'm using. And my honest prediction is that I think my numbers are going to go down. I think because of the hypertrophy not translating directly to the workouts, I think I might lose a bit this time. But my hope is that the hypertrophy gains will feed in. It'll be kind of a like a feeder or a prerequisite for the strength, and it's going to boost the strength gains when I get done with that. So that's the hope, but we'll see when I actually do the assessment. And then the other thing for hypertrophy is I'm trying to keep track of my weight and hoping to actually gain weight here. So my starting weight was about 145, a little bit more, and I'm hoping just to gain weight. I've been eating a bit more, doing pretty hard hypertrophy work, and hopefully that means I gain muscle. I personally have a hard time putting on muscle, so we'll see if this actually works. And then I'm kind of just like shotgunning a bunch of measurements out here to see what works, or if anything picks up anything else. But I did do a couple of just actual measurements, so biceps and forearms specifically, just because I should have looked it up. I don't know really good ways to measure a lot of the other stuff. And I'll just see if those in particular, the forearms specifically, obviously it's the most relatable to climbing, and we'll see if that gets impacted at all. And then the final one is just watching your workout progression. And for me, it is trying to keep track of the exercises where I make a lot more progress than the others, and I kind of flagging those as potential weaknesses going into it. So, for instance, for me, I've been making a lot of progress with like my curls, but for things like the Arnold presses, like I haven't really made that much progress. They still feel hard. I don't really go much, up in weight. So it could mean that I have a lot more potential to improve my biceps essentially than I might the more compound kind of Arnold press muscles. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to keep track of. And then after each phase, I'll make sure to do my assessment and then compare it to the previous results. So again, the assessment video is out there, just kind of going over the details, but I have the kind of 4 different hanging time and weight measurements, and then a few random, well, not random, a few of my chosen exercises I wanted to keep track of. So front lever progression, one-armed pull-up, how much I can do there, just a static lock-off length, and then I was going to do the campusing just to keep that in there. That I would imagine is going to go down just because I haven't campused at all during the hypertrophy part, but we'll see. Who knows? And then also my flexibility. So I have been trying to work on that, and that I think is one of the few good things. I guess it's the silver lining of the boredom of repeater workouts, is that you have that downtime to work on your flexibility or whatever you want to do. But so I've definitely found a lot more time to work on that, and I'm really hoping that kind of shows through in the assessment, but we'll see. That is it for the hypertrophy stuff. Hopefully this is helpful, and I will do the wrap-up video when I'm done on that, and then we'll go through and do basically the same thing for strength and power. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.